Hello and welcome to another episode of Adventures in Publishing Land, where we try and take an irreverent look at the latest publishing news and goings-on in the writing and publishing world. I'm Marco.
I'm Tarek.
And I'm Nadine.
I almost forgot to introduce ourselves there.
I'm sure we've done that.
I was so desperate to get to the news. So why don't we do that? We'll go straight to the news now. So we're going to start off with you, Nadine. I think you're. Oh well, actually, before we get to your story, this was going to be an AI-free episode, but inevitably we can't do that. So a very brief update on what we've been talking about in the last few episodes, which is the Anthropic AI settlement, which has now been approved by the judge, and there. I suppose the main thing is that there's a website where you can, it's like I think an official website that details the settlement, but also you can now, I think as of today or yesterday or something, look up to see whether your book is included or your books are included in the settlement, because there were the issues about whether it had to be registered with the Copyright Office of America, and also the time period when Anthropic was doing this, so that books appeared in the LibGen pirated library, but they aren't all included in this settlement. So you can now go and look up and see if your books are there. Are your books there? Have you done this? Yeah.
This is why I'm shaking my head, because all 13 editions of my books are on the LibGen, whatever it's called, website.
So technically you should be getting $3,000 per book, right?
You would think so, wouldn't you? However, my books, I put my books, and I did it all different variations. I put my name, I put all the individual titles of my books, and even though they are registered in the US, but they were not part of that. I think it's 445,000 title list.
Yeah, because I think it's before 2021. I think possibly. I think we did this, so it's going.
So so that means it wasn't actually stolen.
No, so my book's not in that dead list.
Specific raid.
There'll be plenty of other raids to check, but
I honestly, probably about an hour or so before we started recording, I thought, let me check, because I know it's registered, but nope. So I will not be getting my what would have been $9,000 plus interest.
You'll have to cancel that holiday that you'd booked.
I'm cancelling everything.
But yeah, we'll put a link in the description so that you can find that easily. But enough about AI, because we've talked about AI so much on the podcast recently. We are going to instead go much more highbrow.
I know.
And talk about the Booker Prize.
I've got my glasses on and everything. Okay, so the Booker Prize. So I think it was last week they released a shortlist for the Booker Prize. But then also around the same time, there's an article in the Times, and basically the title of the article is "The Booker Jury is Right. There are too many bad novels, and I should know." And Woody Doyle, who is one of the judges of the Booker Prize, he basically said out of 153 novels that were submitted, the majority of them were a waste of time. And then the so they narrow it down, they get their shortlist together. So they got their shortlist of 6. And it just had me thinking, it's like, if they're struggling, because the article basically does go on to say how literary fiction is kind of having a hard time at the moment, because cozy, even though they call it derivative celebrity cozy books, and romantasy and romance are dominating the bestsellers list, and they are. Because I think if you take out Dan Brown, and you take out Robert Galbraith, J.K. Rowling's book, the charts, both hardback and fiction and mass paperback, they are dominated by the cozy crimes and the romantasy. But they're saying because of that, the publishers are putting all their efforts into these books, and literary fiction is having a hard time, which is why they're saying that they're struggling to get really good quality literary fiction, and also that literary fiction is struggling because publishers aren't invested in them. And it just got me, it was only once I was reading it, it just got me thinking, well, if you're struggling so much to find good books, why is the Booker Prize just restricting itself to literary fiction? I mean, it's not to say that they haven't in the past had I'm saying crime books are on the shortlist. I think the one I found was Snap by Belinda Bauer, which is a proper, I say proper crime. The others, even if you go on the Booker Prize website, it describes it as crime tinged. So it's
Well,
not
it's like,
quite.
was Graham McCree Burnett not up for the? Was it the?
Which
not,
one was
yeah,
his?
that was his Bloody Project.
Yeah, which
That
is
was-
crime.
So that was I would definitely say that's crime.
It's very
definitely
literary, but it is, yeah.
but definitely crime.
Yeah. So, but this is just when my thinking was like reading the articles. I'm like, okay, so now you're a bit upset. This is my take from it. You're a bit upset that literatury's not getting all its just rewards at the moment because the bestsellers lists are being dominated by dragons. It's the best way to put it, and cozy crime. But why not widen the scope? Because it feels to me like with the Booker Prize over the last few years, you've given us just like a little bit. We can have like one crime book, maybe like once every couple of decades, and the rest of them it can be a cross between literary and crime, but moving more towards literary than crime, which is why they call it crime tinged. And probably that's the problem. Maybe it's that the Booker Prize needs to be looking wider than literary, because it's not like we don't write good books, whether it's crime.
What is literary
crime,
fiction? You know, it's a very, you know, people have their ideas of what it is and isn't, but surely that as a description, you know, as a description, it must evolve as well. So
I think,
you
but
know,
that's what I wrote.
Yeah, it must be that some of the, you know, and I've read crime books. I've even read sort of, you know, speculative science fiction books and stuff that are very, very what I would call literary. But maybe the Booker wouldn't consider them because they're too genre focused or whatever. Which seems, as you say, that does seem reductive and restricting themselves too much, I think.
I think the danger as well is that you start to give off the kind of impression that the Booker Prize, for instance, is a prize that is by a large number of the population irrelevant, and not something which you know people who consume most types of media are interested in, and think and become something which puts forward books that no one's ever heard of and don't like. And I think I'm not saying that the most popular book should always win, but I think if I never thought of it as it had to be a prize for only specific type of books that are not plotty or and I get that. I do struggle as well with the whole literary stamp. I'm never quite clear what literary books are a lot of the time. I get that they're very well written, that they're focused more on the language and the syntax and the sentence, the character, as opposed to the pacey plot, thrillery twist stuff. I get that, but I don't see why they have to be mutually exclusive a lot of the time. I think I don't see any reason why you can't.
The only thing that I would say is that you know, it is fair, I think, that there are, you know, different prizes reward different types of writing. You know, there's lots of crime prizes.
Oh yeah.
There's
sci-fi awards.
Sci-fi awards.
Yeah.
So
100%.
you know, there's nothing inherently wrong with the Booker focusing on literary books, I don't think.
But
But I think it's just the scope of it. That's the thing.
But listen, the reason why I say it doesn't, like if you go on the Booker Prize's website, it says what they're awarding the Booker Prize for is the best sustained work of fiction which speaks to our current times but will endure and join the pantheon of great literature. And to me,
does that mean that like a sci-fi novel or a crime novel would never?
Technically, yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess Margaret, but then Margaret Atwood won it for The Testaments, right? Or she co-won it with
She co-won it with
But she would argue that she doesn't write sci-fi novels. She doesn't see.
Well, I know you're getting towards the whole thing about snobbery of you know, looking down on genre fiction.
But that's why I think the Booker Prize it does have to be careful that it isn't, you know, having to tie itself up and not to avoid seeing that it's a sci-fi book or and.
No, but it's like I think a lot of these prizes almost it's like, you know, the Oscars has never, or I don't know if it has now, but you know, it never nominated a comic book movie and all this sort of stuff because it you know, there are certain categories. Yeah, exactly. It's even though it's easily you know, these films were the most popular films certainly for a decade or more, they weren't good enough as far as they were concerned, to give their prestigious award to and stuff like that. So it is difficult because I do think that there are different types of fiction, and they are entitled to their own types of awards. But I think even that description from the Booker Prize, and obviously the Booker Prize is massive, it's a global thing that people know, and it's a huge prestige. But saying that it'll be something that stands the time of great literature and all this sort of stuff, that is that very phrase suggests a book that will, you can't just have a mere crime book or a mere science fiction book winning something like that.
I know, but then my argument is that, it's two things. One is that you're not evolving, and you really do need to evolve, which is because the whole point of the article is that literature's being pushed out, it's fading, and there's not enough good places, there's not enough good work being published because all the money's going to everything else. But then if you look at the beginning, the first part of their statement is that the best sustained work of fiction which speaks to our current times. And for myself, or for most of us as crime writers, crime books do that. They speak to our times. You can argue romance, all different various forms of contemporary fiction.
Science fiction can speak to your times in an allegorical manner. But
so I feel like they're doing themselves a disservice, because if you got the judges, it's saying they're just basically it's not good enough, and it seems like they struggle just to find books that they feel is worthy of being long-listed and then shortlisted. That's part of the judge, I suppose. But
what did Orbital win? Was it the Booker?
Yeah, Pulitzer? I think last year.
Was it the Booker? Yeah, Booker or Pulitzer, one of them.
That is, it's sci-fi. It's not like spaceships sci-fi, but it is a science fiction.
I've not read it, but it's
much more
very literary. It's
very literary. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's less about that.
Poem,
it just
poetry.
happens to have that sort of stuff in it.
Yeah.
But it's these things are always amorphous. They try to categorize things. I was going to ask you to. Would you class yourselves as writing literary? No. I know you write crime, but would you say it's on the literary end of the crime?
If I'm honest, I'll say it's commercial. It's definitely. I want to say that commercial fiction. I wouldn't say it's literary.
I agree with that. My gut feeling is always, on the one hand, literary. When I think of literary, I think of something which is concerned with the prose and above all. And also that it will not sell. I always think literary books just don't. I think very rarely literary books are bestsellers, because they're all, in my head anyway. Maybe that's unfair. In my head anyway, they are always niche titles which are, look at Orbital, sold barely anything until it wins, and then it's massive, obviously. But I do feel like these books don't sell that well, and because they're not concerned with commercial.
Yeah, I think that's right. That is fair. They aren't concerned with the commercial side.
But that's not to say I don't
distinction.
enjoy literary fiction, because I do. One of my favourite books is,
of course.
It's Middlesex. I absolutely love Middlesex. But I don't know.
Here's an example for you. Like Donna Tartt, I would say, is a literary author, 100%. Secret History, one of the best books I've ever read. I loved the Secret History. Definitely a literary book, I would say, but also has a pretty good pacey plot. It moves forward, and also sold incredibly well.
But yeah.
Well, maybe not pacey, but
I know what you mean. No, there's a real story in there.
The real story, exactly. It's a real story.
It's not just a character
story. It's not
just a character piece.
I have to say, the Goldfinch, I didn't get on with at all. I really didn't like that much. But so I guess you can have authors which are literary, and even
you definitely can.
Yeah, we need to talk about Kevin. Is that what it's called?
When you talk about, is it Lionel Shriver?
Lionel Shriver, yeah. I would think of that as a literary book. It is very
I
much
would
concerned.
I would even class someone like James Ellroy as literary in a way.
Has he ever been longlisted?
I would agree with that, to be honest, because he is all about the prose.
I'm not
for him
sure
is
if
such
he
a
has
massive
been.
part of it, though. The style of his writing, it's a massive part of why you read his books. Is the writing.
Definitely.
But I don't see why. I'm just picking Attica Locke because I read her last book in the summer, and she's an amazing writer, crime writer, and I couldn't see why her books wouldn't be books that would qualify or be submitted for or be worthy of winning or be longlisted for a Booker Prize.
Because I think her books are too overtly crime. And I think that, like that, from the Booker's point of view,
I know, but
they're like, that's crime. They don't even look at it. And
I know,
whether
but
right or wrong,
that's
like, that's
wrong.
what they do.
That's wrong.
Yeah,
Then
yeah,
is
yeah.
what we're saying.
I
Like,
think that I
probably they
understand. I
should
think
look
it
at it.
is wrong. And
Yeah.
if you're gonna cry about, because I mean, the subtitle of the article is "Literary fiction is having a crisis of confidence." So it's having a crisis of confidence because you're not evolving.
Well, maybe it's marketing then. Maybe what if Attica Lock was marketed?
That's all genre
as,
is, though. Really.
Well,
marketing.
yeah. So what if Attica Lock was marketed as literary
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to crime at all, and it was pushed as a literary book? You know, would that, and same with Elroy, etc. If they were never ever
No, but
putting the
you
mark on
have
the
you
crime
have someone
shelf
like the
bookshop.
like Ian McEwan wrote. I can't remember what his book was called now, but the science fiction one that he wrote, and he came. You know, unfortunately, I think even his attitude towards it was like he'd never read a science fiction book before. It was sort of like, it's amazing what you can do to tell a story that is, it's got these science fiction elements, but it's about our present times, and it's like that's what science fiction
Literally
is.
science
That's
fiction,
what it does.
Well, that's what the Booker Prize says, isn't it?
Maybe it's
Speaks
different if
to
an
our
author
current
comes to a
times.
sci-fi novel or a genre novel, if they come to it having done a career in literary, and then they do a genre novel or a crime or a sci-fi or fantasy.
But there's
difference.
definitely an element. I mean, I'm not saying from the judges necessarily, but I think just with the distinction between literary and commercial fiction, there is an element of snobbery there that people look down on, and even within the commercial stuff, there's snobbery. Things like romance, even romantasy, is looked down upon by other people because they think, well, that's not serious
It's kind
fiction,
of-
but
it's
it's
kind of like
massively
this-
popular, and
Yeah, and
also,
I think it feels like it's kind of like dismissing the skill.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
like,
I mean, in a way-
100%.
In a way, all this calls back to Osmond in our last episode, talking about the fact that
not Osmond.
Osmond,
Donny
Richard
Osmond.
no, Don Osmond, Osmond, going back to
Richard Osmond.
his episode, saying that he writes cozy crime, but he doesn't
Yes,
like being called the fact that he writes cozy crime because he
It's
feels he
reductive.
tackles issues and it's
Yeah,
reductive. And I get that. I kind of get, I know we kind of made fun of him last week, but I get that point. Sorry, Richard.
Yeah, no.
Also, sorry to
well,
get your name wrong.
I'm going to move us on, although it's sort of linked from the Booker Prize from literary fiction to fan fiction, turned into bestseller and Hollywood material.
This
So,
is 50 Shades of Grey.
well, that is an earlier example, but at the moment, as we've been saying, the big thing, 50 Shades of Grey was Twilight fan fiction turned into 50 Shades of Grey.
Was it
and
really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
it started out as. Yeah.
She wrote
I
it from the
did not
point
know
of, it was
that.
all like was it
Bella
Edward,
and Edward,
the
I
guys,
think. Yeah.
his point of view and stuff, and yeah.
Edward, Bella and Edward, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
but
think so.
the latest one is that there's been 3 books that are based on fan fiction of Harry Potter. So I think there was Rose in Chains by Julie Soto, The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Bridget Knightley, and the biggest one, I think, certainly the one that's been released most recently released and has already got a Hollywood deal, is Alchemised by Sen Lin Yu, and these started out as sort of fan fiction about Hermione and Draco Malfoy from the Harry Potter books, and then these have been turned into these massive books, taking, I think, advantage of the market desire for things like romantasy and stuff. But these books are huge. Alchemized is going to be one of the biggest books of the year, if not the biggest book of the year. And it's got the Hollywood deal, as I say already. And is there I suppose, touching back on that snobbery thing, is there anything wrong with that? If that is the start of the novel, it's obviously not about Hermione and Draco now. There's different characters in the books and stuff like that, although you may be able to see through them to these original characters. But, is that as valid as any other starting point for a story?
Can I just clarify something? If they take these authors, have they taken, whether it's Draco and Hermione, taken these characters, originally written fan fiction, And then has it then be changed, like they've changed characters and maybe changed setting, and then that's been morphed into a different book?
Yeah,
Is that
I mean,
generally what?
essentially, I mean, I'm not entirely sure about whether I'm not entirely sure what the difference is. At what stage it stopped being fan fiction and
This
it
is what I'm
started
trying to
becoming
gather.
the fiction. I mean, the Alchemized was based on what was apparently a very, very long and popular fanfic based on both Harry Potter and The Handmaid's Tale. There's a combo for you. And that has then become Alchemized. So it definitely had, at the start, it was these characters, and then it's suddenly...
And then they rewrote it. I'm assuming.
essentially, because and the elements of the book have changed and stuff like that to fit in with it, so it can be its own thing now. So
I don't really have a problem with it, to be honest.
no, I don't.
Like,
think
I
so.
kind of think every idea has been done. Like,
There's no original ideas. That's
there's
what
no
they say.
original ideas. Like, everything is a copy of something else. Like, Harry Potter is not the first story about a boy wizard who goes to a school who's the chosen one who has to save the world. Blah blah. Like, I think as long as the final product is its own thing, and stands by itself and tells its own story and stuff, and is not clearly a plagiarized work of someone else, then I don't really care how.
Yeah,
it
and I
got
don't
to
think
that
these
point,
are.
to
I
be
think
honest.
they're their own stories.
Yeah, I bet loads of folks started off doing well. I mean, obviously 50 Shades of Grey and this stuff are the big examples, but there'll be loads of folk who start off doing fan fiction. I started doing fan fiction when I was a kid.
It's an easy because you've got a lot established there. You don't need to build the world.
Yeah.
And
Characters
stuff like
are world done.
Yeah.
You just write your own. It's just the story you're doing. But then I suppose, so if I used to write Star Trek fanfic, if I then wrote a sci-fi story with like a crew who working on a starship who solve problems, yeah, it's very Star Trek like. But as long as it's its own thing, there's tons of fiction out there about crew and starship.
I mean, to be fair,
okay.
when I was 9, the first book I wrote, it was basically The Labyrinth. But I'm not sure if that was...
Nice. I love that
It
film.
was. That's the first. I don't think I necessarily have an issue with it because, reading the article, they said, it's hard to see any traces of the Harry Potter world.
Okay.
So you can pick it up and read it as its own unique thing. I think my issue might be more with the publishers. It's probably same like movie studios. Instead of you seeking out original work, you're just kind of like movie studios, you're just rebooting the same old stuff. Like they're rebooting Miami Vice again. It's already been rebooted once. Now you're going to do it again. So similar to the publishers, it's like, why are you...
Yeah.
You're seeking out new works from, I mean, what do they probably found them on TikTok or something like that? It's just where you're looking instead of you going through your slush pile.
No,
I think that's probably my issue with it.
I think that's a fair point. Yeah,
but that is not that's not the issue with the authors, then, is it? It's
no,
the publishing
it's just saying I
decision.
can't take an issue with the author.
Yeah.
I think I can take an issue with the publishers and where they're choosing to find new authors.
No, you're right, and I think it is very much akin to the film world. I think, especially, I know everyone says there's too many superhero films at the moment, and that's a different argument, and one I don't necessarily agree with. But I see the point, which is so many big budget movies nowadays are big tempo movies are very samey. Like, it's very similar.
But it's not even just the super, like they keep going back to, right, we're going to remake this movie from the 80s now.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why? Just come up with something new.
It's a pure safe bet, isn't it? It's like the story's already done. You've got a built-in audience. You've got the nostalgia factor, which is massive these days. Like, I can see the reasons for it, but and I think and I don't really mind them too much. As a lot of them are, I don't have to watch them, I guess. But yeah, it's a shame when stuff like that overtakes or takes sucks the air out of the room a little bit for original stuff. Yeah.
I think that's true. But I suppose that moves us neatly into your story that you want to discuss, Tarek, which is about the risks that the publishing industry isn't willing to take, really.
Yes. So this is a story which was it was actually sent in to us by long-time listener Isabel Broom, another author who everyone should check out their books. And she sent this article, which is The Publishing Industry Has a Gambling Problem, is the name of it. It was put out in, let me double check the name of the
Walrus.
The Walrus.
The Walrus, which I never heard of before. It's a Canadian website.
Yeah.
but basically, the author of the piece, Taja Ison, I'm sorry if I said your name wrong. The argument that they make is that the publishing industry at the moment is treating book deals and author careers like a kind of gamble, like it's a high stake gamble. So they're betting only on big books that they think can become bestsellers. So they're putting all their money into fewer books, but books that they think are going to return on their investment. And as a result, the kind of mid-list authors downwards, the niche voices, etc., they're getting pushed out to one side, and they're expecting these results. And if a book doesn't become a bestseller, it's then dropped or neglected. And I think the big bit that jumped out to me, and I don't know if any of this is true, to be honest, this is just what the article was talking about, but what I found quite interesting was the reliance on the data and how editors and acquisition teams are relying on things like sales forecasts, market data algorithms to look at a previous author's work to say whether or not that author is should be getting X amount of money for marketing or whether they should be buying the book, etc. And I think the worry was that we would focus so much on the return or the sales that one author's book had done in the past, and you wouldn't look at the picture around that sales. You wouldn't be saying, well, why did that book not sell? Was it the cover was crap? Was it just in a sea of similar titles when it came out? Was it the fact that it wasn't marketed well by the publisher? So it kind of strips all that away and just leaves you with the data, and it's hard to get a feel, I think, for the reasons behind that. And I think if that stuff is true, and if that is the way that the market is moving, which towards these big best-selling books, less of them. I think the worry is that, as we were just saying there, you do kind of homogenize the market a little bit, and you get safer stuff, and everything kind of gets kind of samey because they know people like it, and you're discouraging risk taking and experimental works, etc., which are still going to be there's at the moment. I think an experimental piece of work is still going to be a niche work, perhaps, but would that even get released, perhaps, or would it get anywhere near the same amount of marketing push behind it? If they from the get go they don't really think it's going to do that well, and so I think and I was going to talk about the film industry. I think I can totally see this, whether or not it's happening in publishing. It's definitely happening in the movie industry. I definitely do see this sort of stuff happening, and I think, fun enough, the example that I had to kind of buck this trend was Sinners, the Ryan Coogler movie, which is a fantastic film, passion project for him, and tells a kind of very, it's not a formulaic action movie at all. It's more of a kind of horror-y, musically vibe. It's a really cool film, and it's done amazingly well, and it's been backed by a major, by Warner's, etc. So that would seem to say to me that actually, independent kind of stories are still being shouted out by people. But then I kind of thought, well, the reality is that Ryan Coogler, he's paid his debts. He's done a lot of Hollywood, Black Panther movies, Creed movies. He's done a lot of boilerplate type films for them to earn his stripes, I guess, to get that chance. So maybe if you hadn't done those, would you
in the film world? Is it not something to do with as well, though? That because obviously in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, you had a lot of independent films, but it was cheaper to make films. You could make films.
That's true. The budget's
much smaller budget. And if you do that now, you just can't compete, and you don't. And the marketing maybe wasn't as global. You didn't have to spend as much money and all that sort of stuff. So maybe that's very true. All of that sort of stuff. So I think that
changed massively.
The landscape has changed, but I think that's true of books as well. There's so many books do get published every year. But so few of them get a marketing push or make a splash. Ultimately, that's the sad.
But this is the thing I've never been able to understand. Like looking at writers we know personally, and just looking at it generally, I've never understood why anyone would pay for an author's book. You're putting money at you, whether that advance is $5,000, $50,000, $500,000. You'd put money in that book, and you don't want to see a return on it. And also, if you're taking on an author, I would assume that you would also not only be invested in the success of that book, but also be invested in that author's growth. And if you're constantly, if you're just putting all your focus onto what you think is going to be I'm saying book A, this is one that's going to be making a million. Let's just put
Yeah.
all of our focus on there. Then you just, it's just a matter of course you're going to be neglecting
Yeah. And
everyone
also,
else on your slate. And it
and
doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't. I agree with that completely. And I think, and the flip side with that is that what happens when you put all that money behind a book, and the book still flops.
Which we've seen.
It's which we've seen before. It's impossible to predict what stuff with all the time with 100% accuracy what's going to do well, and what's not going to do well, and it's I'm sure we've said before as well. Stephen King gets tons of money. Does he need it all? You could share that or down the middle list a little bit. Everyone I would love to be a fly on the wall. I think sometimes in these meetings, see what.
To be fair to Stephen King, he sells his film rights for $1.
To be fair, and I do love that about him. I do love the fact that he does let people like have a shot at doing it. Yeah.
Going back to Richard Osman, I mean, and the only reason I'm going back to him is that obviously he sold 145,000 copies of his new book last week, which is crazy. I mean, I wouldn't say no to it, but it's crazy. And I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. In the back of the bookseller, there was an ad in their job vacancy section. There was an advert looking for, I think it was a publicity director, but solely, not for
him.
An imprint, but solely for him. And you could argue you don't need to be taking this salary for one person to be focusing just on Richard Osman. Like, he's fine.
Yes.
Like, his books.
Yeah. But I suppose he's becoming like I suppose he is kind of like getting to that Stephen King, J.K. Rowling point of like, he's a brand in himself, isn't he? Like he is his own. Yeah. He's like he needs he maybe does need that kind of separate, separate marketing.
No,
thing.
I know.
Maybe he's not at that level yet, but
I don't think he necessarily needs it though, because you can be a brand and that can, if you want to say that, you could categorize him as being passive income. It's always going to sell, whether or not you put 50 grand into his marketing budget or $500,000 into his marketing budget. Yeah. And you could take that, you could take that money and spread it out amongst your mid list and take that publicity director you would have given.
Yeah, probably make more money
and make more money.
Those books. Yeah.
It's not.
I think that's
start
true.
Books out? Should we just become a publisher?
That sounds even more stressful than running a podcast. So no, I vote no.
It's a strange, we're writers. We're in this very strange game of publishing, and you want to. It's all about sustainability. You don't just want to be a one-hit wonder. One book come in, and then you do your 2-book deal. You deliver your 2 books, and then they say thanks, but no thanks. You want to know that there's going to be time. There's commitment. To you as a writer as well as to your books.
100%. But at the same time, I think those, the money itself can become a weight around your neck as well. If you get one of these giant advances and your book flops, then that can ruin your career entirely because people don't want to publish you anymore. You're untouchable, essentially.
I remember loads of folks saying that's especially if you're like a debut, you're untested, untried, etc. That is the danger of it. And then as you say, that hanging. I mean, I guess that's why so many folk change their relaunch almost have a pseudonym for
they
book,
do,
etc. Third book. And I think also all this ties in. I still find it fascinating the fact that that authors don't have any access to sales figures and stuff, and even the publishers I think sometimes don't have access because it's getting the numbers is such a massive thing to pull all the figures, and I don't understand why it's such a big massive thing when you've got film studios who seem to have the day after a film comes out they're putting the numbers out there. I would love to know more about how these numbers are made and how. Go
to our box office and on Reddit, and they'll tell you exactly how a film's how much it's going to get at the end of its run. They analyze all of this stuff. So
do they actually?
Yeah.
With any accuracy?
Well, but reasonable. Like they were sort of like, Superman's going to top out at
600.
If it makes over 600, then it'll do.
Take
well.
it into account how much it's
Fantastic Four won't reach 600 and all this sort of stuff. And they were saying that based like on the opening weekend. They were sort of projecting.
So what they're not talking about marketing spend. They're talking about purely opening weekend.
They're just looking at what is this going to take? What is this film going to take at the cinema? And how long
that doesn't mystery.
I mean, it's just it's a lot of people on Reddit, but it's interesting to read.
A lot of people on Reddit.
I
think that's the we call it adventures in publishing land, and that's the problem with publishing. Is that lack of transparency. There's so much of it that's so opaque. Like you say, you're talking about numbers. You should be able to know. Because I know some writers, they to this day they don't know what their numbers are. They have no idea, which
I
is
will
just
say,
ridiculous.
having put some books up through Thomas and Mercer, which are part of Amazon, you get access to everything. Like and I get why, because it's all going through. It's only you get access to all the sales through Amazon, which is like 95% of all the sales.
Yeah.
And that is because they control all that, so they know exactly what the numbers are, and they have a spreadsheet that you can look at any point, have live daily updates of your stats. And actually, I haven't done that now.
It's not a good thing to know.
Oh yeah, another day of no sales.
You know,
just refresh. No, it's still there.
You know the articles saying, publishing has a gambling problem. It's like, why don't you spread the risk? This is what
That's it. Yeah, that's.
They don't spread the risk, do they?
Yeah.
Cover that table in chips, exactly. All on 17.
Why
all
do
on
some
17.
proper gamblers in here?
Yeah,
they're not proper gamblers. They're just they're amateur gamblers. They're all in 17.
Exactly, that's me. And then bust after two spins of the wheel.
Marco will have blown through his budget by the time I've even got my chips.
We once went to the casino. Tarek went to change his money into chips, and by the time he came back to the table, I was gone.
He'd already blown through everything.
See, I'm
number 17 to come up twice, and that was.
I'm a lucky gambler, so I choose to not gamble that often because I feel like I have an addictive personality.
That's a real winner.
Yeah, probably sensible.
Genuinely.
Sensible.
I know when to tap out.
Let's move on to our Stranger Than Fiction segment. Yes. Nadine has found another grisly story.
It's so grisly. I don't know. This might be my favourite Stranger Than Fiction at the moment. So I always feel I have to caveat it. I was minding my own business.
Yeah.
Scrolling. Anyway, so I'm scrolling along, come across this story this week, literally a few days ago, and of this guy called Lorenz Krause in upstate New York, who confessed to killing his parents on live TV, on an interview. So I was like, what? What do you mean on an interview? So it still happens last week. It's not even that long ago. So I think in May, the Social Security Administration office in the States, they get a tip-off about this guy's parents. And his parents, I think, were 83 and 92 years of age. And it's all to do with like their version of the pension and the benefits. So fast forward to last week, the police turn up to his house to do a search at his house. That's on I think the Tuesday. The Wednesday, they start digging the garden because this man's supposed to live there with his parents, but there's no sign of the parents. I think the neighbours had thought they'd gone to Germany. So anyway, the police start digging. So they get the tip off. Tuesday, they're at the house. Wednesday, they start digging. Thursday, they find human remains. And then on the same Thursday, this guy called Lorenz Krause sends a letter, a 2-page statement to all media outlets, basically saying he wants to talk. He wants to talk to the media. So this news station called CBS 6, the news anchor called Greg, invites him over to the studio, invites Lawrence over to the studio. Lawrence is there in his t-shirt and shorts, and he confesses to murdering his parents, strangling them. I think he strangles his dad.
It's not like an accidental.
No!
Yeah, actually, proper just comes out and says it.
He strangles his mum.
I think he tries to say that he did it out of mercy.
Out of mercy. He thought, that's what he says. Okay. So he strangles his dad with his hands. He's just with mercy. He strangles his mum with a rope because that's what you do.
Christ.
He says that my concern for their misery was paramount, right, which is why he kills them. And then halfway through the interview, he says he's pleading the fifth because he doesn't want to self-incriminate himself. But I think you've already done that because you've confessed to murdering your parents. And then he says he didn't, all the money that he was obviously receiving, his parents' money, he didn't benefit from it, that he gave it away to people in the Philippines. And I just thought the whole thing, and then obviously he's arrested. This all happens last week. Obviously he's then arrested for the murder of his parents. But it wasn't the fact that, I've heard stories of, they buried so and so in the garden. They found the human race. It wasn't that. It's the fact that all this is going on, and instead of you to go and say, "Let me go and get a lawyer now. Let me do what I need to do," even run away. You choose to write a very long statement, and I saw bits of it, but I think they must have found a way to take it off the internet because I can't find the whole thing. But it's this very rambling statement, and then you want to talk to the media, and then you sit there, I said, in your t-shirt and shorts and confess. So that is my stranger than fiction.
It's a very American thing, isn't it, for killers to want the media to hear them out.
Yeah, old school.
Put their case across.
It's like a 70s, 80s thing.
Yeah, it is.
It is like Zodiac Killer. Was
Zodiac,
that
I was thinking of. Yeah.
He was more taunting that they wouldn't catch him.
It's
But yeah, it's
taunting,
strange.
But it's still this
thing.
need to communicate. But I can't imagine, I don't know why I'm picking some guy called Tom who lives down the road from me, just bopping into BBC studios. Poor Tom. Can I have a chat? I've got my parents buried in the garden. It's just, I don't understand why you'd want that.
It's an uncomfortable one, isn't it? Because on the one hand, pure devil's advocate. On the one hand, I can get the whole the merit killing argument. There's a level of that I can understand. People are in pain and suffering, etc. I can see. I'm not saying
strangling them with a bit of rope.
No. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I get the kernel of the inclination as to what he obviously in his head had thought he was doing a nice thing. But then how he runs with that and keep cashing the pension check. Well. Then I suppose you have to, don't you? I suppose you have to. What can you do? Fake their death.
What does it say
until
about
proven guilty.
So. Yeah, 100%.
Oh well, now his lawyers are trying. I don't know how they will, because
it sounds like he's not all there.
Well, I think you'd have to be if you're going to call up the newspaper, news people, and say, and rock up in. I don't know why I'm just fixated on the shorts and t-shirt.
I think it speaks to his mental state.
Yeah. But his lawyers are trying to say it's inadmissible, and that maybe the news people were working in cahoots. So it's kind of
to be fair, how was his admission? Was it coercion? Was he if he's not
that's
there,
the only
was
way.
An appropriate adult in the room with them?
I mean, he wrote the letter, though.
Did he?
He wrote.
A letter was given.
Okay.
This is what I would normally do as a defense lawyer. But even here, if it was me trying,
are
to
the parents even dead?
Oh my God.
Right, I'm gonna move us on before we get sued.
It's admissible. I don't think I can kick this confession out.
To the other part of our off-script section, which is where we talk about something completely unrelated to the publishing industry, and it's October. It is, I feel Halloween is a much bigger deal in America. Like they've properly celebrated like a proper holiday.
Everyone's got pumpkins.
We pay attention to it maybe on the 31st of October, and that's it. But anyway, it's October. It's spooky season, as they say. And just wondered your favorite horror book or film.
Good question.
I don't know if I have a favourite. I enjoy The Conjuring though. I mean, I'll just say I do enjoy the Conjuring series, but I don't know if I have a favourite.
I would say
horror movie.
I would say Alien is probably one of my favourite horror movies for sure. I love, probably because I love it because of the sci-fi vibes to it. I do love that. I would say recent films I've watched, horror films I've watched, which have been really great. Weapons. Really great.
I haven't seen that yet.
Movie. It's really, really, really good. And Bring Her Back, which
I've heard of it. I've not seen it. Yeah.
It's the same guys who made Talk to Me, which is another really good horror film. So Talk to Me is about folk who have this withered hand, and if you hold the hand, you take into this kind of trance, and then you can like communicate with the dead. And if you hold it on the hand for too long, you bring them back with you.
That's like an old like that.
Oh yeah, it's a totally old.
The hand, the sort of alchemist hand or something like that.
Yeah, there's definitely, and the whole idea of like
folklore,
taking too long and bringing things back. It's almost like what's the Kiefer Sutherland old movie, the Zap and Die and what?
Oh,
no, no, the one.
He killed himself. The
Flatliners.
Yeah, it's that idea that he flies to be. But it's very good. And Bring Her Back is fantastic. About kind of it's a mental. I won't bother going into it, but I was going into it without reading too much. But it's quite heavy. It's quite heavy. It deals with like a lot of a parent in her dead child, and it's quite a heavy film, but very, very, very good. I felt kind of drained. I didn't want to watch it again afterwards. Whereas Talk to Me was quite a fun horror movie. Like Midsummer, Midsummer's amazing but draining.
Yeah.
I was done.
I
after
watched
that.
more as a kid, as a teenager. I watched more horror movies. Like every other day, I would have watched one, and then it kind of tapered out as I had to work for a living.
See, I
free time.
avoided horror films for a long time because I just don't like. I was saying we were having this discussion off air, Tarek. I like horror books. I like that sort of creepiness and the feeling of dread and stuff like that. But actually seeing it on screen, I'm not a massive fan of them.
Are you scared, or you just don't enjoy it?
No, a bit of both. I suppose it depends on the film, but I think it's a sense of I don't like body horror at all.
Yeah,
and I don't
love body horror.
And jump scares, I would prefer to know when they're going to happen, so they don't scare me as much.
Like horror movies, then.
No, but I do. I love eeriness. I love creepiness. I love that sort of.
You just don't want to be like jumping out of your seat.
What about video games? Do you horror video games like Resident Evil?
Yeah, I like those. I like I played most of those. Resident Evil.
I often find them more.
But maybe it's something that you're in control of.
I think that's it. Yeah.
It doesn't feel as bad.
The thrill of being like jump, it's like being on the edge. That's part of the thrill, I think. Of
the tension is, and I sort of like the tension. I just don't like the jump scare at the end.
It's like a roller coaster. It's that kind of like it's you're scared, but it's safe. Like you're safe. It's not,
Yeah.
And then afterwards, everyone kind of laughs together. It's like there's a atmosphere with you. I remember playing Resident Evil 7 in VR years ago, and I must look like a twat. I would stand up, put my VR headset on, and I would I'd play it by I would turn myself around to orientate direction, and then it'd push forward on the controller to move forward. So, and it was terrifying. And I remember one scene getting to a door, and I kind of faced the door, walked up to the door, and then the door swung open, and it was a dark room inside, and all that happened was there was a nursery, dark nursery, a ball bounced along from nowhere, and you heard a child's laughter. And I remember thinking, I actually am too scared to walk into this room, and my legs. I remember feeling my legs genuinely trembling a little bit.
I know, but that's virtual reality. No wonder, because it's it's so immersive.
It was too immersive.
Yeah. But you know what? I need to apologise to you, Marco, because I was mocking you about the jump scares, and I remember I might have told you before, when I went to Japan, see my brother, and I went to amusement park, and we went to a haunted. I don't like haunted houses. I don't like the ghost train. And I don't like haunted houses. I know. It's just why I have to apologise to Marco, because it's that whole jump scare thing. I don't like it. And I remember we went to the haunted house, and they said, and it was posted, things like the Japanese horror movies. And so it was a whole immersive thing. And it's supposed to be a mental asylum that had been shut down because all the mental patients got murdered in there. And the guy said, the guy in the beginning said, if you're scared, you can have this special talisman. So if they jump out the ghost and see you, they won't scare you so much.
Oh, right. That's decent. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and they said, if you want to leave early, there's a door you can leave. And my brother was like, you're not leaving. I was scared to death. It was, I had my Apple. Yeah, I had the talisman on. I had the Apple Watch on, and to check my pulse. My pulse had gone sky high. And bearing in mind, I write what I write. I was scared to death, and there's a bit we went down to the basement. We're supposed to be in the morgue, and also they got the AC on high. It's freezing cold. You're hearing all this creeping. I've never been so scared in my life. So I need to apologize.
Brilliant.
It wasn't brilliant.
I love those kind of immersive.
I couldn't wait to get out.
But
I loved it.
You said that you write what you write and stuff. That's the thing. I can read. I love Lovecraft. I love Stephen King. I love reading this stuff, but somehow watching it is although having said that, I feel that I'm getting better. I'm pushing my limits. I've been watching Midnight Mass, Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass, which is maybe low down, but it's a great story. I'm really enjoying the story, and it does have some jump scares. and I'm still watching it.
See, I don't
so
like zombies, and I'll
I'm
sit
doing
there and
well.
watch Walking Dead, but half the time I'm there with a cushion behind.
Yeah, I watched Walking
Kind of
Dead. I didn't
face.
really find that scary particularly.
I did
I reckon.
find. So go on.
Obviously, I reckon you're probably stronger than you think, Mark. I reckon you could probably watch. You test yourself. Finish Midnight Mass and watch Midsummer.
You're killing
I've read.
No jumps.
See, I read
you
Midsummer
read
script,
the script for that, yeah.
and like that, it was creepy like anything, and like I thought it was brilliant, but I was like, I don't ever want to see that because
I did find though there was a point. I think maybe like mid 2010s or something. There was like all the horror movies. They were all starting to feel a bit samey.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
And I just I just cut off from it, or like I wasn't interested. There wasn't anything. It's like publishing. There wasn't anything new being made.
Well, I was chatting about this with a friend recently. Like back in the day, you'd get like a run of horror movies made by the same person, like where your Wes Craven or your Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Carpenter, and you don't really get that anymore. It's much people. I feel I kind of miss that in a way, but I also appreciate the fact that
but you do have.
I think horror movies are so varied now.
You do have. Well, that guy that made Weapons, what's he? He also made the Barbarian one. And
Yeah.
stuff,
I mean, to be fair, there's every focus on
Brian
making horror
Craig
films, but then I
and
think
stuff,
Barbarian Weapons are quite different type. They feel quite different, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I think like I used to get you get Wes Craven doing like Scream movies, and then or you have a run of Halloween movies and stuff, and I guess Saw. I suppose that's still.
I didn't like. I mean, to be fair,
semi-going,
I only
isn't it?
watched like 20 minutes of Saw, and I didn't like it.
I maintain the first Saw movie is a genuinely brilliant, really taut, tight, tense movie. It's the 3 T's, taut, tight, tense.
Taut.
And it's brilliant.
I didn't like Blair Witch
and
Project.
After that, it kind of goes downhill.
Oh, see, I watched Blair Witch Project. Like I
can't remember.
found
I
it
thought that was.
very. I
it
found
was
it
not
very
horror.
The original
scary.
one back in the
Yeah.
90s,
Yeah.
whatever.
We went cinema to watch that, and I was not impressed at all. I
You
was
must be
sitting
pretty
there
young
like,
though, right?
no, I'm older than I look. No, I was not. I was not
Oh,
young.
when did it come out? Is it not like in the 90s? Or was it later than that?
I was at uni when it came
I
out.
was at
You were
uni.
at uni. Wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, Blair Witch.
When did the first one come out? It must be
must
older than I thought then.
Yeah,
Is it late 90s?
so it must have been. Yeah,
They had an
it was
anniversary.
only about 5 years ago. I
God, you
was at
guys are
uni.
old.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. But I remember being at the
No
cinema.
wonder you
and I
can't do
wasn't.
horror movies. You probably end up having a heart
He's a
attack,
baby.
dying.
That's what I'm worried about. No, but the bit in like Blair Witch Project I felt Blair Witch Project has a good creepiness to it, which
I don't
was
think-
like
no.
there's the bit where they're walking through the forest and then they suddenly realise that they walked to the same, like they've been walking all
Oh,
day
yeah,
and they're at the
yeah,
same
that's-
place
I remember
again.
that bit.
And then the
No.
very last scene, I'm not going to spoil it, but that was pretty creepy as well. So yeah,
I want to watch it again, actually.
I
that
sat there.
stuff did.
I sat there, I was not impressed. And all I remember at the end of it, that scene you're talking about, that scene happened. And all I remember is there's this girl's voice in the audience. Is that it?
See, yeah, I don't know, but yeah. So
1999.
I'm trying to up
99.
October. I'm going to try and up my horror watching this month.
Oh, there's a
Um,
film called Nightbreed, which is like, I was obsessed with that.
I don't remember that one at all.
Very good. It's very early 90s horror.
Nice.
I
I
made
will
my
report
brothers
back
watch it a
next
lot.
episode with what I've
Watch
with what I've
Nightbreed.
watched. Yeah,
I
If
would
can
say
find
watch
it, I might
Weapons.
watch.
It's
I might
it's
watch
not
Weapons.
too bad.
I might
It's-
watch
it's,
Weapons. Yeah.
Very good.
But we will bring this one to a close. As ever, if you've enjoyed the episode, please do thumbs up, like it, rate it, leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, follow, tell your friends. All of these things. I probably missed some off there, but if you can do all of that, that helps us grow the podcast. You can listen to the podcast on our Step podcast feed or on our individual show feeds, which of course are Page One and The Conversation with Nadine Matheson. And we will be back in a couple of weeks with more publishing news chat.
Yep.
Lovely.
We shall
See
be
you
back.
later.
Bye.